Welcome to winter, people. It has been cold. It has been snowy. It has been winter. So, I was talking recently to Randy in New Hampshire about ice beers. He was asking me if I've ever done one. And the only thing I've ever done is just a small scale experiment of just putting a little bit in a plastic bottle, putting it in the freezer for a little while, and then pouring out the stuff that's still liquid and drinking it. But I thought I could do a little bit more of a slightly detailed experiment. So today I'm going to try to reduce about a half gallon of a stout I have, reduce it by 25% or so, maybe more, I don't know, we'll see how it goes. Then the plan is to actually bottle it. It's carbonated now, but then hopefully I'll make it so it's not carbonated, and then I'll try to recarbonate it. So I found a nice little shady spot here on this chair. This will be in the shade all day. Temperature is not as cold as it has been. I'll see what the temperature is when the thermometer is still dropping when I get back out here. But yeah, this was inside here a minute ago. And see what happens. See if we can make some ice beer. I don't know if it really matters or not, but I've sanitized this glass Pyrex container as well as the lid underneath it. So this is a Shakespeare Stout. I made one the first time several years ago, maybe 2006 or so, and I liked it, but I did a side-by-side and it wasn't as close to the original as I would have liked. So I made some notes, and I just made this again in 2013, and I like it quite a bit. However, I cannot get the Shakespeare Stout anymore, so I can't do a side-by-side. I get lots of Rogue, but not the Shakespeare Stout. So anyway, what I'll do is I'll make sure I get an even half gallon in here. Looks like I'm just about there right now, and get it outside. It might be a little bit over. I should mention that of course you could just do something, especially if you were doing a small amount like this, in your freezer, and if you don't have below freezing temperatures in your backyard. I just thought it'd be fun to try to do it in my backyard since I have all this cold. So I have it out here. I'll periodically be checking on it, and then once it starts freezing I'll be scooping out the ice, and I'll show you that when I get to that point. Okay, I went out to check on this. It's now kind of in the late evening, early evening rather. And I'm seeing some frozen business. So this is a sanitized spoon. So basically, what I want to do is try to just get the ice. The light might not be the best in here. Sorry. It's kind of hard to do this and film and do it. But that's good. And so once I get this volume down a little bit, it might freeze a little faster. It's actually about 7 p.m. and I kind of put it out there in the late morning, but it was just warmer today than it has been. I mean, if it was below zero, this would have been going a long time ago. But basically, I don't know. I mean, if I had a pure slotted spoon, that would probably be best. But I'm kind of tilting out the liquid in here and trying to just get the ice. I bet if I let it out there a few more hours and do this again, I might have to finish up in the morning. I might bring it into this room here where I am right now. That's pretty cold, but it's probably above freezing, and I don't want to leave it out there all night because it probably would freeze solid. So I'm going to keep working on this and then put it back out. Just another real quick thing that I just did right now, since I was getting some liquid in here that maybe is beer, maybe has alcohol in it, I just picked this whole thing up and put the spoon right here and just tilted it. I just held the ice in with the spoon and just poured the beer back into here. So that's another thing you can do if you want to really just try to get the only ice and keep all the beer in this container. Alright, now it's been another couple hours and the temperature is actually closer to zero outside, and I went out there and this thing has definitely got probably more ice than the first time. So I dumped the first stuff in here. It's about a cup. And then I cleaned this out. And I did that, let's see how this goes, because, oh wow, yeah, look, pull this back a little bit here. That is almost tempting to try to eat it. I mean, come on, right? Am I right? It's a beer slushy. So now this is probably going to extract another cup at least, because this is, ugh, look at that. This is more than the first time. Actually, after I get this ice out, I can look at the side of this Pyrex, and it has the measurements. I'm trying to get the, ugh, save the beer. Wow, this is kind of sweet. So you could do this amount in your freezer. You don't need to live in god-awful wasteland like I do. But anyway, if you were going to do a whole thing, I think what some guys do is they freeze it in a corny keg, and it kind of freezes on the top, and then they just sort of pressurize it a little bit and run the beer out into another thing, and then get it out that way. So there's other options. You can also do a 5-gallon bucket if you can do that. This is just where I've been setting this spoon and some sanitizer. Alright, so this was at 2 quarts. So I'm almost down to 1.5 quarts, which would be 75%. So like a 25% reduction. I was thinking of doing around that. I might actually go put it out there for like another hour and let it freeze some more. But actually, what I'm going to do now, if there's some beer down there, I'm actually going to pour it back in here. So I'll go put it out there and let it freeze a little bit more. Thought I would just show you guys the scene out here at night. It's now down to 0, and there's a little bit of more slush on here, so I'm gonna go ahead and drain that off and see what I get. Alright, so I did one more scooping that I didn't film, same type of process. So I've ended up with, this is the 1 quart line, so I'm a little over a quart remaining, and this is the 1 quart line, so a little bit under a quart extracted. So basically I've almost done it down to about 50%. So I'm going to let this sit overnight and fully release all of its CO2, and then I'll bottle it up. It's the next day now. I've been gently stirring this one. This is the one that I'm going to bottle with a sanitized spoon. I've been trying not to splash, but I've been trying to work out any remaining CO2. Like I said, this beer was already carbonated, which is probably not the best way to do this, but we're just experimenting. So I'm going to bottle it in these smaller bottles. These are antique Coke bottles. They're 6 ounces. And I usually use 4 of these little, what are these, conditioning tablets, Brewer's Best, per 12 ounce. So I'll just use 2 in these, and I'll sanitize some caps, I'll sanitize these bottles, and we'll get this all bottled up. A quick aside here, I thought I would take a gravity reading of the ice/beer collection, and it's not as low as I thought. It's about 10-13. I think the Stout ended up being like 10-16, so a little bit high for a lot of beers, but not all that high for a Stout. And so I'm tasting it, and it's definitely Stout flavored. It tastes like a beer, but what I don't know is how much alcohol is in there. Could it have a lot less alcohol but still have that gravity, or would it have gone lower? That's what I can't tell, and I haven't tasted the this stuff yet. If I have any left over from bottling, I might taste it, but I kind of also just want to wait and see what happens when it gets carbonated. But I'm not going to take a gravity reading of that one either. But I thought this might be closer to water and closer to 1.000, but it wasn't. It's Maybe I'm just drinking like stout flavored water, or maybe it's like a 1 or 2% alcohol beer, I'm not sure. Alright, here we go. I just have a siphon tubing here and my bottling wand. It's all been sanitized. Just kind of curious to see if a lot of CO2 is going to be coming up out of this beer still. It is kind of foaming. I mean, this is just mostly an experiment in taste. This really is not the process for doing an entire batch of ice beer. Whatever, you know, if you're making an ice bock traditionally, or if you're just kind of icing anything to see how it comes out. Mostly this is to compare. Hopefully I will still have some of the non-iced stout around in a couple weeks when these ones hopefully get carbonated, and then I'll just do a side-by-side. Basically, I hope to learn if it's even worth it to do something like this, if it actually makes us stronger, maltier, more alcoholic, just, you know, what does it do to the beer in general. Looks like I'm going to get at least about 5 of these, but that's going to be about it. So a half gallon of 64 ounces got down to about, yeah, that's really about it. I can just top these off a little bit. Got down to about 30 ounces here. But that's pretty much it from my half gallon thing. It's pretty much all gone. What you see in the tubing is all I got, so I'm going to finish this up and cap these things. I'll let them go for a couple of weeks, keep them at warm temperatures, and then pop one open and see if it's carbonated. I just poured these out, and as you can see, the bottle conditioned one did get carbonated, but I'm going to let them warm up a little bit before I taste them. Alright, let's do a little rundown on this. I made a few notes. This is the 3rd time that I've had one of these bottles. I ended up with 5. So I've already kind of been through this side by side a couple of times and been learning some things. First thing I learned right away is the aroma was very different, because the one from the tab, that's going to be the one on that side, still had a hop aroma, because I made this to be a pretty hoppy stout, and that was entirely gone, of course, in the other one. And so yeah, that's, you know, a pretty nice hoppy, fairly bitter stout as it is. In the ice version, it's a little bit of a different aroma, a little bit more alcohol. And one thing I've learned from doing this is it really does concentrate the flavors, which kind of makes sense. So if you think about a bitter stout with a lot of bitterness also from the roasted grains, if you just sort of increase that, it's, you know, maybe not necessarily the best thing. It's really not what you're really going to want in that type of a beer. So that's one thing that this process does. It does have a little more alcohol in the ice version. I don't know how much more. You get a little bit more of a warming sensation, but you're not really going to drink enough of it to get really blasted on it too quickly, at least not in the scale that I did it. Another thing I learned is that the way that I did it in this video certainly would not be ideal for doing an entire batch. If I was going to do an entire batch of ice something, I probably myself would use a bucket and have a sanitized strainer, and then as the ice would be on the top, it'd be pretty easy to scoop that out, even shake out the liquid and dump out the ice, and that probably would be how I would do it. If you had lines on the bucket, you could also concentrate it down to a, you know, 5 gallons down to 3 gallons or whatever you want to do. But this worked for an experiment. The other thing I've learned is, I don't know why you'd want to do this for hoppy beers, and even this one that has some roasted, high level of kind of roasted bitterness, it's not really ideal for that. I think the perfect type of a beer would be a Bock, and that's why you've heard of Ice Bock or a Maibach or a Helles. Those are all lagers, but you could do a pretty sweet brown ale would probably work. Something that's really all about the malt, because you're going to make it richer. I'll do another taste here. It's going to make it richer, but it's going to concentrate those flavors, like I said. So if you already have a nice malty beer, it's just going to make it a little thicker, a little richer that way. You know, this beer is, it has a hop flavor, but it also has hop bitterness, also has the roasted grain bitterness. Excuse me, I'm a little under the weather, but I wanted to get this video done and get it out. So I'm doing the tasting. There's like a plasticky aroma that I have not gotten out of the other two bottles. Not sure what that is. I assume it's there, not just me. Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of as I'm describing. It's just like a more concentrated stout, which is basically what you're doing. And then, like I said, a little more alcohol. Warming in the finish. Alright, so not ideal process, hoppy beers, concentrated flavors, and malty beers. I don't know, who knows, maybe a smoke beer, you know, might possibly work if you like smoke beers anyway. Another kind of final thought is, if you wanted to make a Bock, typical German lager Bock, but you wanted to make an ice version, why wouldn't you just make a bigger version to start with? I don't know. I'm kind of assuming that doing this process actually gives you a different result than if you just sort of increase the original gravity of that type of a Bock. It is a different process, so you get a different result. That was kind of my takeaway here. It's not unenjoyable, but I think, like I said, I just learned that concentrating this particular beer down this way isn't really the way that you would do it if you were going to do a whole batch. But if you just want to experiment and have a little fun and just kind of try something different, you know, you can do it with any type of beer. You could even do it with cider, mead, you know, things like that too. Ice mead. That seems like you'd be unfortunately wasting a little bit of mead, but that might be a fun idea too. Anyway, hopefully you guys liked this experiment, and thanks for watching.